Sam Khan, I don't know how much of that you got to listen to. I'm not sure about the connection when you're on Zoom and somebody else is too, but your thoughts about how BYU has fit in, it seems like very smoothly involved with the Big 12.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a really good fit and a really good addition to the conference. Certainly it's geographically a challenge for some schools, but I mean, we're in the era where geography really isn't a huge factor in conferences anymore. It's more a collection of TV inventory for partnership. And I think they add good inventory because they're good across multiple sports. And you look at that football program, I know they struggled in the outset, but they were right there in the thick of the college football playoff race and the Big 12 title race this year. I think Kalani Sitake is a good coach who's run a really solid program. They've been fairly consistent over his time there. And honestly, if you go back and look at their history, they have been a really consistent quality program for decades now. I mean, maybe they'll have some valleys here and there, but for the most part, they're a good team that you can consider to be a factor on a fairly regular basis. So I thought they were a really good addition to the conference, as have been the four corner schools that they added from the Pac-12 as well. And it's added really a new level of excitement, and I found it intriguing. Like, I find myself more intrigued by the Big 12 now than maybe even before, just because there's so much new, and I think these schools have really added a lot to the league.
Sam, what are your thoughts on what appears to be the impending expansion of the playoffs and AQs and all of that?
I think you guys know how I feel about this.
That said it all right there, Sam.
I hate it. It's BS. I've never been in favor of multiple automatic qualifiers. There should only be one for every conference. That's it. We're jumping through all these hoops to expand the playoff after only 1 year. And I would say the first year went pretty well. And I would like to see a second year, and then maybe we can talk. But it's such a small sample size. And to me, it's just such a disjointed way to do it. We're basing it on past performance, which I find it funny because the College Football Playoff Selection Committee always says that we only take into account this season and this season's results, but yet we're trying to now change the playoff based on past conferences' performances. There's only one real. If you want to take a lot of the subjectivity out of it, there's only one way to do it. It's go to the FCS model. Either do 16 or 24 and give every conference champion a bid, and then fill the rest out with at-larges. Now, if you want to fill it out with the rest of the at-larges with a formula, or you want to do a committee, whatever. The NCAA tournament, basketball tournament has this model, and the FCS has this model, and Division II has this model, and Division III has this model, and it works pretty well. And oh, by the way, the NFL has a pretty objective model too. There's no ambiguity about who goes in the NFL playoffs. I don't understand why we have to jump through all these hoops to create a playoff. I know why it is we have to do it. I don't know why we allow it to happen, but I know why we have to do it. And the reason we have to do it is because the most powerful conference commissioners in sport want to, and they just want to stack the deck in their favor, and that's crap.
Sam, so a 2014 playoff, would that mean 10 SEC, 10 Big Ten, and then one from the Big 12? Yeah.
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com.
Yes, that would be it. But, you know, the reason I say 24, though, and not 16, like, I've always been in favor of the 16, which would be, I think, how many conferences do we have now? 10, so that'd be 10 plus 6 at-larges. But you're going to have your power conferences belly aching about how many of their teams can get in. So just do 24. Then you get 10, your 10 guaranteed champs, and then you get 14 at-larges. So then that way you can have, the Big Ten, the SEC are going to have a bunch of those at-larges, but at least you've given everyone a seat at the table. You've given even Conference USA, and I know people will say, well, Conference USA doesn't deserve to be in there, but you really don't know that unless you actually put them in and maybe they will win a game. Right. We would also say that about the NCAA tournament and the team that's a 16 seed, and then you have a 16 seed upset of one, and it's happened a couple times now. And you have 15 seeds who you would say, well, that team doesn't deserve to be in there. And then they end up going to the Sweet 16. It's not about who wins the national championship. It's just about having a fair and equitable access to it. That's it. Because you know what? When you go to the FCS playoffs, Division II playoffs, Division III playoffs, guess what? The same teams end up in the Final Four winning all the time. So I don't think it would fix that issue, but at least you're not deciding it arbitrarily ahead of time. And you're giving even the Texas high school football playoffs is more equitable than this. You get 4 teams from every district. I like that. That's fine. And then everything plays out on the field.
And you know what? And you're right. North Dakota State has won a slew of national titles, and it's not them; it's been others. And you know, back in the day when Youngstown State or others, whatever classification, Whitewater. You're right. So at least
Mount
though
Union.
Yeah, Mountain Union. So it does make sense. I don't know how many is too many. I'm like you are. Can we at least, there were thoughts after the first weekend they got to tear it up and do something different because Indiana got blown out, in their game. But I don't understand why it's so hard. But then again, I do, because you're talking about greed, money, and power.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all it is. In that way, it's the most American sport, right? The college football probably mirrors
greed,
that more
money,
than
and
anything.
power. Yeah,
That's right. So yeah. We're reimagining how we're going to decide SEC championship weekend and conference championship weekend. First of all, if we expand this playoff anymore, we honestly don't need conference champions. And if you have multiple auto bids, you sure as hell don't need multiple. You don't need a conference championship or championship weekend. You just go by the standings. Why is that so hard? But again, we got to this place by, again, greed, money, power, and having 16 teams or 18 teams in a conference, which is ridiculous on its face.
Yeah, can you imagine, Paul, the NFC, and Craig, the NFC East, you play the entire year, 17 games, and then you have play-in games to decide. Yeah, go by if you're going to be more like the NFL, be the NFL when it comes to the playoffs.
Well, also, Sam, wasn't the response from all the people who didn't want more than 4 teams is you're going to ruin the regular season? Well, it didn't ruin the regular season. It just made November more valuable than September, so that you could win your big games late and erase maybe a tough loss earlier. And it made it to where not every loss is a crisis for the elite teams. Ohio State is the perfect example of this, especially losing that late game to Michigan. So wouldn't automatic qualifiers ruin a big chunk of the regular season?
Yes, because it removes the urgency of winning all your games or at most of your games. That means that, because let's be honest, if there's 4 auto bids in a conference, we're going to at some point get an 8-4 team in there as the 4th team. Because right now we're sitting here with a few 9-3 teams that missed in the SEC. And I'm not saying that there's going to be a lot of instances of that, but there's going to be someone saying, well, this 8-4 team is better than this 10-2 Big 12 team or whatever. And that's, to me, Ari Wasserman, who used to be my colleague at The Athletic, he's at On 3 now. He had this debate, I think, with Paul Feinbaum on the air, and it's absolutely right. Is when you stack the deck in this favor, you're essentially disregarding the results, because you're just saying on its face, well, we're better than everybody else, so that's why we deserve more. And you're codifying that in the language. And to me, what happens if there is a year that the SEC is really down? Do you get to take one of those spots back and give it to someone else? Probably not. They're not going to go for that. So if the Big 12 has, and that's the other reason why I don't like this. If you're going to do it this way, I don't like the 14 team because it only allows for 1 at large. But what if the Big 12 has 3 10-win teams? You're going to get one of them left out? I think there's just so many flaws to this thing, because again, we refuse to take any power back or to fight for any power. Like, I'm really shocked that Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips haven't just screamed off the top of their heads about this, and maybe it's because they're in a high position and they're more calculated and they're just going to be happy to take their 2 bids that they're going to get left with. But to me, I think this is something you got to fight for. To me, once you take this step, there's no going back, and there's only going further, which is eventually cutting you out of the process entirely.
Well, and they kind of did that by allowing the Big Ten and SEC to have the power moving forward and more of the money. And, Yeah, I don't know Jim Phillips because I've never met him, but we've met and interviewed and had Brett Yormark and talked to him even off to the side. This seems like maybe he's being more calculated and there's got something up his sleeve, but this doesn't seem to be the guy from the inner city streets of New York or wherever else.
Yeah, I don't know Jim at all, but I'm just saying you have nothing to lose at this point by speaking up and just calling it out for what it is and how unfair it is. And I guess you could they take their ball and go home? Sure. But let's be really honest. Do we really think ESPN wants a national championship with only Big Ten and SEC teams in it? I don't think they do, because I think they do realize that how much of the viewership share they will lose if you exclude all the other teams. They want it mostly with those teams, but I don't think they want it with all of those teams, because if it's only those teams and you tell 75% of the rest of the college football fan base that you don't have a chance, your team doesn't matter, then I think they know where that leads long term. It may not be immediate in terms of fall off in audience, but I think long term you would see it. And so I do think that there's some degree of they probably don't want it either. And I don't know what the conversations are like between the conferences and the TV partners, but I would have to imagine there's some conversation along these lines too, and about how those two conferences should tread really carefully about how they do this.
Thank you very much, Sam Conn, theathletic.com with